Hello, everybody. This is the favorite part for me of my interviews because I get to see the person I'm talking to. I get to show you who they are, and it makes a real difference in how we relate. But I did want to show you something else that I could not have done if we just did a podcast. I want to show you my ring. Look at that ring. Can you see it? It's a clamshell. See, everything to me is a shopping opportunity. I have to walk 220 miles so I can buy a clamshell ring, got myself a bracelet, I got a certificate with a little box. So, everybody says, oh, you get older, you downscale, you downsize. Forget about it. I'm still a material girl in a material world. So let me say hello to our guest, Suzanne Maggio. And you know that SuzanneMaggio.com is her URL, is her website. You learn more about her. She is the author of Estrellas. But there's one other thing that I mentioned when I introduced her on our podcast is that she is also a podcaster. So tell us about your podcast.
So the podcast is funny because, again, the Camino provides, it was another thing that came out of the walk. Of course, I came back, I walked in 2019, and we all know what happened in 2020.
Yes.
So 2020, the world shuts down. We are in the pandemic. And I am in the process of writing about my journey. And one of the things that I write about in the book that really struck me, one of the changes for me was really recognizing this impact that we have to make a difference, all of us, because so many people have made a difference in my life from that journey. Also, I'm a social worker and I'm a university lecturer. So my whole professional career has been about making a difference and making changes in the lives of others. So during that really dark time in 2020, 2021, when we are in the throes of COVID, I started thinking that we needed some light. We needed a way to lift one another up. And so I began thinking about ways to shine the light on people that are making a difference in their communities. Not famous people, because it's easy, for famous people to get attention. And not just throwing money at an issue, but people who are really on the ground making a difference, doing ordinary things. And the tagline for my podcast, which is called From Sparks to Light, is ordinary people doing extraordinary things.
That's wonderful.
So I began interviewing people who are literally giving back in various different ways in their community, from, someone who is advocating for LGBTQ folks in their community, to someone who is serving the homeless, to someone who is making a difference in terms of providing food to people who work with Alzheimer's and dementia patients. It's extraordinary the ways in which ordinary people are giving back. And I'm in my third season. I'm about to start my fourth. I've interviewed over 70 people at this point. And these stories lift me up, and they lift up people who listen to them. And so they really are meant to inspire in the same way that your podcast is meant to inspire people to move. My podcast is meant to inspire people to get involved and to give back, and that all of us can make a difference.
That has been a theme. We talked about that, folks, and a shameless plug, because this is something you want to do. On Ageless Traveler, we have a section called Ageless Ambassador. It's very important that you consider volunteering. People get mad at me because they love pickleball, and I keep saying, get off the pickleball court. You don't have to spend 3 hours and then tell me you have no time to volunteer. Fact is, you have time, but there's some wonderful ways to do it all over the world. So please look at agelesstraveler.com, Ageless Ambassador. We're working with AmeriCorps Senior here in the United States and places all over the world, including Cambodia. You name it, we can show you if you would like to volunteer, which is a very big thing, by the way, Suzanne, for folks who are retired. So we have a big kindred spirit here. And for the United Nations, I do a podcast. You mentioned the words, on the ground. And that's the name of it. These are NGOs, non-governmental organizations, that are dedicated to social work, psychology, LGBTQ+, crisis, refugees, so much. So there's a lot out there and there's a lot of need. Thank you for that. Now, how do we find it? Is the podcast on Apple and Spotify? How do we find your?
It is. It's called From Sparks to Light. It is on all the regular podcast platforms, and it's also available on my website.
That's wonderful, which is SuzanneMaggio.com, as you will say on this. All right, now we have to go 180 degrees to husbands. Okay, you got one, I got one, right? And they don't walk, at least mine doesn't. So even if my hiking here at the Coachella Valley Hiking Club, which is around the corner, I'm by myself with my group or alone. I hike alone a lot. How about you? Do you have any issues? Because there are people watching this saying, I want to go away for 2 months or 10 days, but I know my husband's not going to want to walk, or my partner, or my significant other, or whatever it is, whoever you're responsible for in a loving way. Caregiver is different, but they just don't want to go. So is there something you say? Is it just the relationship worked out right? How did you make that happen?
So it is interesting. It's a funny thing. I've been married a long time. My husband and I are about to celebrate our 38th wedding anniversary. So lots of years together. And when I said one day at 59, I want to walk the Camino de Santiago, he looked up from the football game he was watching and he said, have a great time.
Okay, yeah, right.
And he meant it. It has been extraordinarily supportive in this passion that I have discovered. And one of the best things that happened from our relationship, which was interesting, at 38 years, a long time, and you think you know somebody, and then he surprises you. And so I woke up the first morning in Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port in my little bunk bed, and there was a text from my husband. And he said, have a great walk today. We're really proud of you, and we'll be thinking of you. And for every single morning, for the rest of that walk and every consecutive walk, I have woke up to a text of enthusiasm and cheer and support for my walking. And so he has been my biggest champion. Now, I know that's not true for everybody, but I do want to say that it is important to find your own passions and support them and your own journeys. My husband is unique in that way, that he's like, and I met people, they said to me, what do your husband think about you walking? And I was like, he's all for it. He's excited for me to walk. My parents did almost everything together growing up. And so I don't remember my mother having friends on her own or doing adventures on her own. And certainly she didn't travel on her own. But I do think it's important to do that. We only go around this earth once. So if you have something that you're interested in, if you have a passion, you have a curiosity, and I'm a big fan of travel. I think travel is life-changing. I would say do it. Just do it. Just take the risk, put it out there. And if it's important to you, it's important to do it, because you don't get a second chance.
You certainly don't. And, I wish that I could give you, who are having difficulty with your partners, some really good advice, but it didn't happen to me either. But I did do this, folks, from the beginning. I did not want to get married 52 years ago. What do you think of that? And we didn't even have a wedding because of me. But he said, look, the door opens and the door closes. You can always leave, you can always come back. And that was the freedom I was looking for. So I established that very early. But to your point, people do surprise you. And this is what I've learned that might be helpful for the folks with issues. I've said to them, have you said you wanted to go? And guess what? They say, no. Oh, he would never, or she would never go for that. Did you ask? No. Imagine that. So that's the element of surprise. Most of the people presume that they know their loved ones very well, and it's not going to go right. They presume that. How do you know? You didn't ask. So at least try that. And the other is, of course, because we are a traveling family, one of the things that we always do, particularly when I walked in Alsace, a place he really wanted to go, was that after the walk was over, he came and he met me. So he did fly into a wonderful town, and we had another week. But we're travelers. Not everybody could do that or even wants to do that. But that often works. All right, now let's go back to the word work. So you work. You're a lecturer in psychology, you're a social worker, you're a counselor, and so on. How did it affect your work? We know a lot about how it affected your personal life, but how did it affect your work?
So in the last, let's see, since 2015, I have been a full-time lecturer. I was a social worker, practicing social worker, still a social worker, for many, many years. And social work really is the professional work of helping. So, that's not unfamiliar to me. But I think, again, that reminder that every interaction that we have, even the ones that seem the most benign, can be life-changing. And I think for me, it also affected my work in that I understood that my relationship with my students is important. The way I show up for them, the way I listen, the way I ask questions, all of that has the potential to make a significant difference in their lives as well. And so I think it reminded me again of that kind of thing that we recognize as we get older, which is this moment matters. And as the older you get, and at this point I'm about to turn 65, our lives are not going to go on forever, and you want to make every minute count. And I learned that on the Camino, because every minute did count on the Camino. And I have tried to carry that into my life. And I think professionally, that's also true. I've really tried to pay attention to those smaller moments and recognize that we do have the potential to make a difference.
I think that may be one common denominator of everybody who does the Camino, regardless of where they're from. And that is, they begin to appreciate the moments in time, truly appreciate the moments in time. For me, it was very simple. I was always a broadcaster since 1988. I've been on the air on Law and Money, and then on aging. But on the Camino, I realized how much joy I got out of travel. And it took me almost 10 years, but I gave myself the gift when I turned 75 to do the Ageless Traveler. Because I couldn't see how a program about leisure could really help anyone. You have some wonderful shows out there about travel, from Fromer, from Greenberg, and so on. What do they need me to tell them where to eat in Paris? They have a lot of people who can tell them where to eat in Paris. But I figured it out, because I wanted this show to do what the Camino did for me, which was establish the fact that I never would have to stop doing something I love. Yeah. And in my case, it was travel. And in my case, as in yours, it was that every moment counts. So we thank you so much. Tell us one last time, because it's going to be on here to show where we find you.
So you can find me on SuzanneMaggio.com. You can find my books on Amazon. I have Estrellas is the book about the Camino. I also had an earlier book called The Cardinal Club, which is about my relationship with my mom, who passed away from Alzheimer's disease. And on the podcast, From Sparks to Light, which you can find on all of the regular podcast places.
So thank you so much for being with us. And you know what I'm going to say? Get out there, kids, make it happen, and never stop traveling.